If you had to guess the time of this image, you would probably estimate around the middle of the day. Since everywhere in the world is not in daylight at the same time, different times are given to match day or night at a particular place. It would be too complicated to have different times to match the sun for every individual town, as there would be thousands of them. So the world has been divided up into different regions called time zones. Standard time zones were allocated as the industries developed, because there was a need to communicate across and between different regions and countries around the world. The 3 standardised Australian time zones were introduced in 1895. The sun rises 30 minutes earlier for eastern parts of New South Wales than in the western towns. However, all of New South Wales is under one time zone. The sunlight hours match mostly the time of day, and that's why we do this. So times change as you move across Australia. So the 3 time zones in Australia are the Eastern Standard Time, the green section, the Central Standard Time, this kind of orange coloured section, and the Western Standard Time over here in the reddish kind of section. As you go through, there is one exception of a town in New South Wales, Broken Hill, and they decided to go in with the Central Standard Time because they're really, really close to the border there. And you can see here at 9 o'clock in our Eastern Standard Green Time, it is actually half an hour before that, half an hour behind that, so it's only 8:30 p.m. when it's 9 p.m. In Eastern Standard Time, and even further behind that is the Western Australian Time. So they're an hour and a half behind our Central Time, and they're 2 hours behind our Eastern Standard Time. So we need to use those in terms of working out the time differences. So sometimes you might hear people on the radio say, oh, it's the 7 a.m. news in Sydney, but it's actually at 5 a.m. in Western Australia, so they might make reference to that. So looking at some examples here, if I'm looking at Sydney to Perth, because that's 2 hours behind, the time in Perth, we take 2 hours off, would be 1:30 p.m. When I go between Darwin, up here in the Central Time, over to Melbourne in the Eastern Standard Time, now Melbourne will be half an hour ahead, so it's 10:30 a.m. Canberra, now Canberra is in our Eastern Standard Time, and Broome, which is all the way over here in the Western Standard Time. So there's a 2-hour time difference there. So it will be 2 hours behind at 6:30 p.m. In Albany, which is down here in the Western Standard Time, and Brisbane, again in the Eastern Standard Time. So Brisbane will be 2 hours ahead. So you add on your 2 hours. Adelaide, here in the Central, and then Hobart, which is right down in Tasmania, but it's still in our Eastern Standard Time. So that would be a half an hour time difference. So it's 2:30 p.m. Broken Hill. Now, Broken Hill is in our Central Standard Time, even though it's still in New South Wales. And Rockhampton over here in the Eastern Standard Time, so there'll be half an hour time difference. So it's 7:45 a.m. Albany and Adelaide, so there is an hour and a half difference between these 2 time zones, so we can see that it's 3:45 a.m. So Alice Springs, which is in our Central Standard Time, and Port Hedland, which is over here in our Western Standard Time, so between these 2 time zones there's an hour and a half difference. So Port Hedland is at 7:30 a.m. It's an hour and a half behind. Now Broome in our in our Western Standard Time, and Alice Springs in our Central Standard Time, which is an hour and a half difference. So you add that on. So from Katherine, now Catherine's up here in Central Standard Time, and then going over to Perth, the hour and a half difference there takes it to 9:45 a.m.